Well, it's about time. This is some of the best political news to come out of Minnesota since I would say the night that we found out that President Trump was reelected and that Tim Walz, thank God, was not going to be the next vice president of the United States. Pam Bondi, the Department of Justice, Harmeet Dillon have announced that Minnesota is being sued by the Department of Justice to request access to our voter rolls. Now, Minnesota was voluntarily asked to let the Department of Justice take a look at what's underneath the hood. And the Minnesota Secretary of State, Steve Simon, who's a Democrat, said no. So the next step is saying, okay, well, you won't do it voluntarily, then we are going to force your hand by suing you. And I think that the chances that the Department of Justice gets access to the voter information is almost 100%. And why? Because voting is a civil rights issue. Making sure that those election systems are truly safe and not full of fraud is important to our actual civil liberties. So I think that the chances that the Department of Justice wins this lawsuit is like basically 100%. But it does make you ask, like, why wouldn't the Secretary of State, Steve Simon, open up the voter rolls? What is it that he's hiding? Now, I've made previous videos breaking down exactly why this is an issue in Minnesota and that I personally believe that Minnesota has one of the most corrupt voting systems in the country. We do automatic voter registration, and a lot of states do. But the problem is we then gave illegal aliens both driver's license and government benefits. Both of those acts automatically trigger voter registration. Now, the claim by Secretary Steve Simon is that there's some internal system that stops people that are illegal aliens from being automatically registered to vote. That's what he claims, but he's never proven it. So even if you think that in general, states' rights, don't you think that trust but verify is important here? If Steve Simon has refused to prove that criminal aliens are not being registered to vote or sent absentee ballots, then the federal government must step in to ensure that our elections are fair, that our votes actually count, that people that should not be voting aren't voting. And just a little bit of like a pat on the back, little humble brag. Pam Bondi came to Minnesota during this RNC election integrity tour, along with Chairman Michael Whatley, or former chairman of the RNC, and former co-chair Laura Trump. And we had a conversation like in the green room. And I actually did this press conference thing with them. And I told Pam Bondi, when President Trump wins a second term, and when you are appointed to do something within the administration, please come back to Minnesota and force them to open up their voter rolls, because there's so much corruption and fraud. That's what I believed. I seriously cannot understand one good argument why the Secretary of State in Minnesota or any other states would not allow the Department of Justice to look at their voter